I've gone through some pretty traumatic things in my life, most of which I would never wish upon, even on my worst enemies. There is just something about feeling so vulnerable in what is supposed to be a safe place that makes you question just how crazy this world can really be. This scary event of mine happened in the year 1998, when my family and I went to visit the Grand Canyon for summer vacation. This was the first time we had ever traveled in my life, and being only 9 years old, I felt unstoppable, like life was never going to throw anything bad in my way. Along with me were obviously my mother and father, and even my 14-year-old brother, who in this story we will call Marcus. We stayed at this pretty decent motel that had a swimming pool and even a jacuzzi of all things, and it's here that my brother and I spent one of the evenings just relaxing. My parents were watching us for about the first hour, but they went into the room since they were tired, and they told Marcus to keep an eye on me until we were to come back in. Now, we weren't actually alone. There were a few other kids my age, and even a couple of parents who were just sitting around and keeping a watch out. Fast forward toward the end of our swimming session, everyone already being gone for the evening. Both my brother and I get out, and then we head toward the little shower heads so we could wash all the chlorine off our hair and our body. "Hey, sis, feel free to go back to the room. I'm gonna hop into the restroom real quick," I remember my brother telling me. I decided I would wait for him regardless, and thus I took a seat at one of the benches. By this point, the pool is empty, and all I can hear is the music over the intercom playing some music. I was there, just humming along to the tunes, waiting for my brother to be done, when all of a sudden, I see a man, mid-30s, dressed in normal street attire, stare in my direction for about 5 to 6 seconds, before now he starts to walk over to me. "Hey, are you all alone here?" he asked me, to which I told him back, "Yeah, but I'm just waiting for my brother. He's using the restroom." He seemed really nervous and jittery, like somebody who had drank too much coffee. Also, in the 2 days that we had now been here at the motel, this was the first time I'd ever seen him. But I just wrote this off to him just checking in. I continued to look in the other direction, just hoping he would leave me alone. But then he says, "By the way, your parents told me to come and get you. They're in the parking lot. They got some ice cream for you. Come on, I'll take you over there." Even though I was 9 years old, I knew everything about stranger danger, and I was starting to get some pretty bad vibes. I told him I wasn't in the mood for ice cream, and I was just going to continue to wait for my brother so we could go back to the room, and this seems to upset the guy. I watched him act all jittery as I start to get up, and then what happens next was so quick, so fast indeed. I had no time to react. In one quick swoop, I'm lifted off my feet, quite literally, as he now holds me up, and then we start heading toward the side entrance, which can be accessed here by the pool. I'm crying at this point, screaming like a banshee, thinking, "Oh my god, this guy is crazy," as I now begin to try wiggling out of his arms. "Hey, come back here! Someone help!" I heard, which turned out to be my brother Marcus, who was booking it toward us like a madman. I was so scared because I didn't know if my brother was going to catch up to us, and I was still trying so hard to get away. I ended up scratching and clawing, and thank God that I came up with the idea of biting so hard on his arm, he lets go of me, and I fall to the floor. We at this point are in the parking lot. The man now takes off running, and I saw as he hopped into a minivan and drove away, never to be seen again. I'll admit, I start bawling like crazy as my brother comes to hug me, and now even somebody who had witnessed the attempted kidnapping comes on over from the lobby. Long story short, the police were called, and everyone at the motel was questioned. But as of this day, I never found out the identity of my would-be kidnapper. Was he staking out random motels in the area and trying to kidnap kids like me? It's crazy to think, but it's the only reasoning I can come up with. Nowadays, there's high-quality cameras, so most freaks like this usually are kept away, but it does suck that kidnapping still happens. Anyway, I know most of you out there who are listening will probably never experience something like this, and I hope it remains that way. But learn from me. If you suspect that somebody is acting suspicious, don't stick around to find out. Better yet, get some help. You might seem weird for being so paranoid, but some paranoia may be good to save your life or the lives of others. It was January 2015, and I attended a 3-day training course in San Diego, California, that would give me the proper mental tools to prepare myself to becoming a barista. The thing was, my uncle was in the works of opening his own coffee shop up in Anchorage, Alaska, and since he wanted to have family members help him out, this was where I found myself. Class and training was all paid for by him, by the way, which was pretty neat if I do say so myself. However, I ended up picking up the cost for somewhere to stay, mainly because I felt bad if he paid for that as well. Also, since the class was 2 hours away from me, and there was no way I would be driving that much for 3 days back and forth, I chose to stay at a Motel 6 that, to be honest, was in a pretty decent area from what I recall. It didn't look run down or trashy like you hear about from most people who stay at motels, and when I went in for my first night of sleep, I felt so full of energy the next morning, mainly because back at home my dad has 2 macaws, and those feathered little fellas will scream and scream until they make you go crazy in the head. Though they are cute and friendly, and you can turn them on their backs like babies and give them belly rubs, so I'll give them that. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. On night number 2, I decided to grab myself a medium 2-topping pizza and a Pepsi from the Domino's across the street, and I stayed up until around midnight talking with some friends over a video call on my laptop. Right before heading to bed, however, I wanted to go for a quick smoke to help relax my nerves. I don't smoke today, by the way, and I haven't in over 4 years. The thing was, I had left my cigarettes in my car, which meant I had to get my lazy self out of bed. So I grabbed my keys, put on my shoes and a light jacket, and walked downstairs since this is a motel you can walk up to, and then I opened my passenger side door and grabbed the cigarettes from the glove compartment. I lit myself my cigarette and stand there for the next 3 or so minutes on my own, listening to the sound of traffic passing on the nearby street. "Hey, you got a lighter on you?" I recall hearing behind me out of nowhere as I turn around to see a tall and skinny disheveled man with long pepper grayish hair that went down to his butt. Yeah, sure, here you go," I told him as I take out the lighter and help him light his cigarette, hoping he would just say thank you and leave. Not that I was trying to judge or be mean whatsoever, but for some reason, I got this sinking feeling in my stomach that this guy was up to no good. "Nice night we're having, aren't we?" "Yeah, it sure is. Nice for a cutie like you to have sex with me." He used more vulgar words for the word sex, but I'll try to keep the language a bit toned down. Okay. I gotta get going now. I have a long day ahead of me first thing in the morning." He now proceeds to jump in front of me as if to block my escape, and then says how he would love to take me back to his place so we could do some meth. "Come on, you'll like it. Then we can get in bed and we can have our fun." Clearly, this random creep was out of it and somewhere in doofus land in his head, therefore I pushed past him, only for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, I feel his hand grab my wrist, and he pulls me back and says, "You're not getting away from me that easily." The next moments happened so fast that I couldn't believe what I had done until all the adrenaline left my body. Using my car keys, I stabbed him in the face. Well, more like scratched him, barely missing his eye in the process, and this allows me to free myself from him as I now take off running up the steps. He follows me up to the walkway, and as I turn to open my motel room, I just see him start going back down the steps and back into the parking lot that I came from. I lose sight of him when he crosses the street. As you might have guessed, I was beyond horrified. I immediately called the front desk, and then I called the San Diego Police Department so they could send somebody down to try and find him. Unfortunately, nothing turned up, and all these years later, I do wonder what might have happened had I not stabbed him in the face with my car keys to help me get away. Surely, I don't like to think of such an ending too much, and I do hope that eventually he was taken off the streets so he wouldn't prey on others trying to go about their daily lives. So I want to take you back and rewind to the early 2000s, Santa Ana, California. This was when I was dating my wife, then girlfriend at the time. It was a bit of a long-distance relationship at first, until we got married and moved in together, but I made it my best effort to go and visit her at least once a month, work and university allowing. It's crazy now that I look back on it. Most long-distance relationships never really tend to work, but we somehow did. Anyway, every time I would go visit my girlfriend, I would stay at this motel that's about a 5-minute walk from her house. This was mainly out of respect since her parents are pretty old school and they wouldn't allow a boy to stay over unless, of course, we were a married couple. That was something my parents at the time had also taught me as well. One night, we had just finished a date and I walked my girlfriend over to her house and I said goodbye, and then I arrived on the motel property. One thing I noticed, which I hadn't seen on the other occasions, was what was a man sitting in a corner smoking out of a crack pipe. He looked really beat up and like he had seen his better days. And when we locked eyes, he pretty much just cursed at me and called me all the names in the book. I was a bit caught off guard, but I ignored him and walked up to my room, soon putting the TV on and trying to forget him. Fast forward to around 2 in the morning, and I'm suddenly awakened by what sounds like something hitting my door. I did think it was my dreams at first, but sure enough, it's persistent, and I'm even able to hear someone's voice. "Open the door. I'm going to kill you. Open the door." I was able to hear muffled through said door. I got curious to these sudden threats to my life, and when I looked through the peephole, I know this was a bad idea since whoever was out there could have had a gun and shot through the door. I see it's the same man who was smoking out of the crack pipe. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looks furious as he now pulls out a screwdriver of all things and begins stabbing at my door, again saying he was going to kill me. I'm pretty freaked out at this point, even for a big guy like myself. He was about 5'10", I would say maybe 160 pounds. I'm 6 foot, 200 pounds. Thus, if it did come to it, I could take him out. But again, the screwdriver made things that much more scarier. Well, as to not take any risks, I quickly grab my cell phone and start to dial 911. However, even before I'm connected with someone, I could hear yelling coming from somewhere outside. The man now stops what he's doing as I listen in, and I could hear somebody giving him commands. It was the police, which I later found out were called from one of the motel employees after he finally noticed this strange man who was acting erratic. The crackhead ended up stabbing the door a few more times before I could hear him say, "I'm going to kill you one day." The next 15 minutes were me watching through the little window as cops try to get him to surrender. He didn't want to, but eventually a taser is deployed and the man is handcuffed, and the bizarre situation was finally brought to a close. Thank God. I spoke with the police and I did give them my statement, including what the man had told me. They said that they would keep in contact if anything else was needed from my end, but I never heard back at all. Later, I asked my girlfriend if she had heard anything about a crackhead with a screwdriver, but she said that there was nothing that had been reported, so I assumed it was just one of those freak incidents that I had to be a part of. I know this might not be as scary as other submissions the Creepy Fox has covered before, but there is something a bit freaky about having a crackhead stabbing your door at odd hours of the night and saying that he wants to come in and kill you. For context, I'm female, and I was 23 at the time. I used to work at a motel back in the mid-2000s in San Francisco, California, and there is one particular evening in question that I wanted to go ahead and send in to you, so you can tell everybody about it. I got more creepy stories I could share with you, but this one stands out the most. It was around 1 in the morning, and I'm sitting at the front desk just listening to the random infomercials that are playing on the small TV in the lobby. All of a sudden, a homeless woman enters, and then unprovoked begins to shout at me and starts talking about demons and the devil. I'm kinda just there telling myself, well, you've dealt with some pretty interesting homeless people before. Just let her finish her spiel, and she'll leave. I asked her if there was anything I could help her out with. You know, trying to be a nice person. And this turns out to be a huge mistake. Don't interrupt me when I'm trying to cleanse your soul of its evil deeds. Well, okay, that was unexpected, I tell myself. Still, I could sense that there was something wrong with her, whether it be a mental illness thing or a drug-related thing. Once she starts throwing herself against the front windows and then tosses things to the floor, including a newspaper stand, I now begin to say, I'm sorry, but you need to leave. You're causing a disturbance. She ignores me and continues to throw a fit until I threaten to call the cops. Suddenly, it's like a light switch flipped in her head. She does a complete 180 and now comes up to me before saying, do it. I dare you. I'll beat you up before they get a chance to rescue you. She now starts to crawl her way over the front counter, and I'm freaking out as all the adrenaline begins flowing through my body. Was this woman really about to come over and beat me up? Fight or flight kicks in, and one of the scariest moments of my life now begins as she goes for a punch. But as she's in the process of crawling over the front counter to get to me, the momentum causes her to come crashing down right to the floor, face first. I now use this opportunity to grab my own cell phone and dial 911 as I head into the nearby restroom and lock the door. Shouting from her now ensues for the next couple of minutes as I'm on the phone calling for cops. But just as quickly as all of this had begun, it's like things just suddenly stopped since I no longer heard her. When the police arrived to question me on what happened, she was long gone. But after the police did a search of the nearby streets, they find a woman who matched my description. I was asked to identify if it was her, and after I said it was, they just took a statement and took her away. As you might have expected, I was super freaked out, especially since I had been alone. I ended up having nightmares for months, even after I had long quit the job and I had never seen that woman again. Now, I know I should count myself very lucky. There are others who deal with violent people like that, and they get it worse off than me. Which, if I can quickly touch on, it is so sad to see what's happened to San Francisco. It's such a beautiful city. It's just a darn shame that there's so much violence now, and lots of drugs too. I just hope one day it can get better. But for now, that's all I have to say. Please, stay safe, everyone. This was in early 2013, when our house was having termite extermination. It all started when we noticed termites showing up in all parts of the house, on the floors, on the patio, and even the restroom. It was bad, and we didn't really have any sort of warning. It was like one day there's nothing, and the next morning, bam. Anyway, since my wife and I are cheap, we stayed at this motel that's just a couple of blocks from my neighborhood. It's the kind of motel where a lot of homeless people will like to hang out in the evenings, but 99% of the time, they mind their own business. Also, with rooms being $30 a night, having the convenience of checking up on our house and only having to stay for 2 nights, it wasn't really a bother. During the day, my wife and I were out window shopping, eating, driving around the city, and hanging out at this really cool arcade/bowling alley that's called Round 1. It wasn't until the second night of our motel stay that things would take a turn further downright creepy. It was 7 p.m., and my wife and I just returned from a full day of fun. We stopped to get some food, and then we drove and parked outside our home just so we could check out things. Everything looked pretty good. We then walked 5 minutes to the motel and settled in for the evening, watching a movie and enjoying our dinner. Fast forward to about 1 in the morning. I had just woken up from a pretty bad dream and I was struggling to get back to bed. All of a sudden, I ended up hearing a doorknob jingling. I looked to my shoulder and I noticed my wife was missing. I now laid there for about 5 seconds and then I made the assumption that she had gone outside to get some fresh air. However, I also noticed light coming from the restroom. I now put 2 and 2 together and I realized that she was in there. That still doesn't explain who's jingling the doorknob. Well, I wouldn't have to wait long because, no joke, the door opens. I guess I should have mentioned that this motel is cheap for a reason. It lacks most features fancier motels and hotels have on offer. This motel was the kind where in order to open the doors you weren't given a fob key or you didn't need to type in a code on a lock. No, this hotel used actual keys. That meant if someone was smart enough, they could technically pick the lock. Or even worse, you might get a lock that doesn't close properly. Well, I continued to lay there in bed, shaking and sweating, watching as the door slowly pries open and the light from the moon begins to flood the living space. Standing at the door frame is someone wearing a red bandana that's covering the lower half of their face. I also see they're holding a small pocket knife as well. My protective husband mode now goes into full effect, and I immediately jumped out of bed and told this guy he needs to leave. He sort of just stood there for a number of seconds, as if he didn't understand what I had just said to him, before he begins to get closer. Well, what was I going to do? He's got a knife, and all I have is my training from when I used to serve in the Marine Corps. Well, it's better than nothing. Honey, stay in the bathroom and wait until I tell you it's safe. I hear my wife respond back, being muffled by the bathroom walls, and she's just as confused as me. I'm warning you, back away now. One final warning, but the man continues to get closer. Needless to say, I laid the smack down, if you will, not only disarming the guy, but getting in a few punches while I was at it. The guy didn't stick around to fight. He booked it out of the motel, tucking his tail between his legs, and then tripping on the last flight of stairs. I now immediately got on the phone and called the front desk, where one of the employees came to check up on my wife and I. We told them about what happened, and what we discovered was truly shocking. The front door doesn't lock properly. Well, what kind of garbage is that? Either way, we got into contact with the police department, but sadly they never did find who broke into our motel room. I really don't have a clue as to what this person's intentions truly were. Why break into a motel room with a blade, and why attempt opening random doors? We never got answers. Thoughts? Anyway, we learned a very valuable lesson that night. If you've got the money, don't be cheap. Stay at a better and safer location. Better yet, if you have family that's willing to let you stay for a couple of nights, take them up on the offer. I promise. No, I guarantee. It'll save you the headaches. My son was actually the one who introduced me to your channel about 2 weeks ago, and I'm hooked on the stories. I've already binge-watched at least half of your videos. I did see you had an email where listeners can send in their stories, so here I am sending my story. This happened to me sometime in the summer of 1989, when I just graduated from college. My parents had rewarded this accomplishment in my life by getting me my very first car. Better late than never, I guess. Being 23 years old, almost all of my friends had their own cars and drove everywhere they wanted to go. My parents ended up getting me a Ford Thunderbird that I drove almost non-stop. However, I usually stuck to driving around my small town and sometimes going to visit friends in neighboring cities. I still felt as if something was missing, however. Sure, I had a car and a degree in communications, but the thing is, I just felt the need to do more. One day, I went to visit my grandparents, and my grandpa told me about the time himself and my grandmother drove across the United States on their very own road trip. Bingo, it's like a light switched in my head. What I needed to do was I needed to see the world. For too long, I was stuck with the routine of going to school and then going back home. Therefore, later that evening, I tell my parents about my planned road trip across America, and to my surprise, they were all for it. So, after about a week of planning, I get a suitcase filled with extra sets of clothes, and I embark on my adventure. I would start on the West Coast, Washington State to be exact. I would then drive south to California. Then from there, I would head east from LA, going to Las Vegas, then the middle of the country. When all was said and done, I get to New York, and I make the trip back home. The first half of the road trip was wonderful. I got to see many landmarks I had read about in books, and I even made some friends along the way. There was this really nice family I met in Colorado that I met at a town fair. They invited me to stay over at their house, and they ended up gifting me this hand-knit sweater that the mom had made. Really goes to show you the kindness in some people. Which, side note, I wish more people were like that today. I feel like in today's modern age, there's just always so much fighting. It's like, just relax, people. Be nice to each other. Ugh, I digress. I want to go ahead and fast forward to the way back home. This was in Wyoming. It was late in the evening and I struggled to keep my eyes open as the rain hit my windshield. I almost considered stopping at a rest area, but my back was telling me otherwise. Therefore, I stopped at a Motel 6 that was pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It was accompanied by a gas station, which I had stopped at first to use the restroom. From there, I go ahead and check into the motel and I get a key for the second floor. The room I was given was small, but considering I was just going to sleep and then leave, it would have to do. Nevertheless, I hop into the shower and spend about 30 minutes letting the hot water soothe my aching pains. Once I was in my pajamas, I called my parents using the phone in the motel before hopping into bed, falling asleep to static of the small little Sony TV. Everything up to this point has been pretty solid, nothing scary or creepy to report, and I wish I could tell you it remained that way, but this isn't a scary story for nothing. Around 2 in the morning, I wake up to what sounds like my door jingling, and I get the shock of a lifetime. The front door opens, and from my bed, I see someone with a face mask and a gun. I went cold as I laid there as perfectly still as I could, thinking, how was I getting out of this situation? I don't even know what this stranger's intentions are, by the way. My best guess was that they might have been attempting to open doors so they could try and rob people. It just so happened that my door was the only one they were successfully able to open. Time now seemed to have gone to a standstill as I watched this stranger walk over to the dresser across from the bed and grab my wallet. Bear in mind, I don't think he saw I was awake, because again, I'm trying to keep as perfectly still as I could. Then, the masked stranger walks toward the restroom, where I left the light on. It's because the room was way too dark and I had bumped into the corner of the bed just a couple of hours earlier. I still believe to this day that this burglar, if you want to call him that, thought that I was in there. With enough space in between us, I quietly hop out of the bed and run down the stairs barefoot with my pajamas. By some sort of miracle, I saw a police cruiser parked next to the gas station and a police officer was sitting in the driver's seat. Let's just say I think I may have given him the scare of a lifetime because he jumped out of his seat and spilled his coffee. I think, however, seeing this girl with her hair all over the place and looking as if she just saw a ghost can even get to the most bravest of individuals. Anyway, After explaining there's a man who broke into my motel with a gun, he calls for backup, where luckily everything turned out to be peaceful as the man ended up surrendering. As for sleep, I finally did get some hours later when my paranoia finally had settled. The rest of the way back home was uneventful, and I carried on with my life, going on to have my very own family. So, that's my story submission. I hope you enjoyed listening. Take care. Allow me to start off by writing that this might not be as scary as some of the stories you've heard on the Creepy Foxes channel, but I thought I would still send it in regardless. When this took place, I was 20 years old, and it was just myself on a road trip to visit family. To save you too many details, I'll just go ahead and jump forward to where I was. I'd stopped at a rest area in the middle of New Mexico, where I ended up booking a room at a Motel 6. The sign-up process took less than 10 minutes, and before I knew it, I had a nice cozy room to relax in. At around 8 p.m., I was getting a bit hungry, so I walk across the road to an AM/PM to grab some grub. I remember getting a hot dog, some chips, and a Dr. Pepper. So I'm waiting in line ready to pay, and this is when a man approaches me from the corner. "Excuse me, miss, but I'd love to buy you that food. It's the least I can do for such a beautiful girl such as yourself." I was flattered and thanked him for the offer, but I told him it was no problem, I could pay for it myself. Disappointed, he walks out of the store, and I think that this is the last time I was ever going to see him. Anyway, I pay for my food and exit, and I start to make my way back to the motel. "Excuse me, hold on a minute, you got a second?" I turn around and it's the same man who offered to buy my food. "Sorry to bother you again, but I was wondering, do you have Facebook or Instagram? Maybe we can talk." I proceed to tell him I don't give that information to strangers, but he keeps insisting, saying he was a pretty nice guy and that I should give him a chance. Just to give you a visual, he was, I'd say, in his early 50s, slightly overweight, with short brown hair and a light stubble. He was what I assumed to be a truck driver. "I'm sorry, sir, but I need to get back to the motel. Have a good night." Big mistake. I should have told him I was leaving, but I got so caught up in the moment and told him I was staying overnight. That mistake would soon lead to a very creepy experience. That experience takes place about 20 minutes later after I'd seen the man. While watching TV, I now hear a knock at the door. "Open up. It's security. We need to talk to you about something." Well, that was really strange, as I hadn't done anything wrong, as far as I knew. I get up, but before opening the door, I look through the peephole. To absolutely no one's surprise, the creep from the AM/PM is pretending to be a security officer. I wasn't falling for his tricks, thus I pretend like I didn't hear him, and instead I call the front desk. I did make sure to speak loudly so that even he could hear me calling. "Hey, so someone is knocking at my front door and they're trying to get in. Can you please send someone to check it out?" This actually worked because I hear his footsteps running away until eventually everything goes silent. A minute later, somebody knocks at the front door, and when I look through the peephole again, it's one of the employees I talked to earlier. They told me they had no security officer that matched the description I had given, and thus the identity of the mystery creep remained unsolved because he never returned. Nothing against motels in the middle of nowhere, but maybe next time it might be smarter to pull an all-nighter and grab lots of coffee to keep me going. This actually happened pretty recently. My girlfriend and I were on a road trip, visiting different national parks and small towns across the country. We made a stop, and after a long day, we wanted to find a motel we could stay at to get some sleep. We spent an hour calling the local motels and inns, trying to get a room, but unfortunately, they were all full. I guess it didn't help that this was in the summertime, the time when families vacation a lot. Great, I didn't want to spend the night in our car. It's not the best sleeping arrangement, to be honest. Finally, after driving around for another hour, We did find an old motel. At this point, we would settle for anything, so we just decided to stay there. Now let me describe this motel to you. Sadly, it was the only one we could find, but besides the little diner across the street, it's away from the town and pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It was 4 stories tall and was your typical motel where the hallways and doors are on the outside. Essentially, anybody could walk up to the building. In all that time we were there, we only saw 5 cars. I was guessing they belonged to some of the employees, and some were of the people that were staying there. Tired from a long day, we checked in and we made our way to the top floor, where they were the cheapest and I was looking to save some money. Even though it was pretty lonely up there, we would take our chances. We go back to our car to grab our backpack and a few things, and now we lock the car. From there we start heading over to the elevator. While walking over there, we did find it strange that all the lights at this motel were so dim, except for the elevator. They seemed to be brand new and were very bright. One thing we did notice that was odd was when we talked to the man at the front desk, he told us the elevator wasn't working. He said they wouldn't be fixed until tomorrow. How strange, since now they were working. I tried not to mind it. We make our way inside this eerie elevator and press the button for the 4th floor. At this point, we're so tired. As soon as the doors open on the 4th floor, we walk out. We don't even take a few steps until we see someone at the very far end of the hallway. We couldn't see well due to the lighting, but it appeared that they were holding a knife. Immediately, we get back in the elevator and press the button for the 1st floor. Meanwhile, here comes this stranger that looked like he was on drugs of some sort. It was like something out of a horror movie. Thankfully, the elevator closed way before he made it to us. While making the way down, we were just hoping we wouldn't have him waiting on the bottom floor. As we nervously wait for the doors to open for the 1st floor, we make a run to the car, disregarding that we had already paid for our rooms. As we get inside, we see the man now making his way down the stairs. We got out of there as we saw him go across the street, and we ended up spending the night in the car instead. We never bothered looking into what happened there since we were so frightened. Whether or not he was just playing a joke on us, or the man really was on drugs, we won't really know. And next time, we'll make sure to avoid places like that. Oh yeah, and elevators too. The stairs are perfectly fine. This was around 2009, when I was probably 16 or 17. I'm female for your information. I wouldn't recommend doing this, of course, but I grew up in a very small town with hardly anything to do. Naturally, my friends and I would get bored, and one way that we used to entertain ourselves was by exploring abandoned buildings. There used to be an abandoned motel in my town located behind our local Pizza Hut. So my friends, who were all guys, and I of course wanted to check it out. One Saturday night, we pull into the Pizza Hut parking lot ready to explore. We walk over to the motel and we begin to look for our way inside. Not wanting to be seen, we make our way around the back of the building, where there's a door to access the front office. My boyfriend at the time was leading the way, and we see him begin to crack the office door open. Then, he suddenly waves his hand and takes off running. The rest of us join him in fear, and we quickly make it back to the car, wondering what exactly had happened and what he had seen. He proceeds to tell us that as he cracked the door open, he could see candles just sitting around, along with at least 3 men sitting on old furniture. One of the men stood up and came toward the door holding something that my boyfriend said was shaped like a knife. Gladly, I should say that the man didn't chase us, but this guy had apparently been living in the motel the whole time. I can't imagine what might have happened if we hadn't made it back to the car so quickly. Needless to say, we never went back. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to today's video. If this is the first time you listen to one of these podcasts, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of any and all future uploads here on the Creepy Fox. Also, consider picking up some Creepy Fox merchandise, which you can find right below the video player. I've got some awesome designs right here for the summertime that you'll enjoy, so check them out and see what you think. Also, if you'd like to gain early access to brand new videos as well as some exclusive videos, check out the channel memberships option on my page. Which, speaking of channel members, let's go ahead and give my amazing channel members a quick shout out. Thank you to Robbie, Bo, Spunky the Nutcase, Rice and Beans, Scott, Sean, Corey, Linz, and Maribel. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you as well to all the regular viewers who watch my videos, leave likes, comments, and tell your family and friends about my channel, so that way they can subscribe and enjoy what we have on offer here on the Creepy Fox. Anyway, that's going to go ahead and do it for today. I'll talk to you all next time. Take care, and have yourself an amazing day.